it's a bigger story than just commodities, because as you've pointed out, and I think you tweeted out a story this morning, is there a risk that our pressure on Iran and the oil story could shake up the entire Iranian political landscape?
I mean, that's what people have been saying, that essentially one of the goals of these very coercive sanctions, not just targeting, energy, but also prohibiting, for example, Airbus from selling planes to Iran, precious metals transactions, that essentially it's going to put tremendous pressure on the regime. And what Trump is looking for is either for the regime to completely capitulate in negotiations or for a different regime to come in place. And so as we look at what's going on in Iran right now, the rial, the local currency, has lost half of its value. You have protests breaking out all over the country, potentially most importantly in the bazaar. And it was the bazaar protests in '79 that essentially did in the Shah. So we're looking at Iran right now and saying, are these looming economic sanctions going to really change the internal dynamics of that country? What's
the answer?
Well, again, I think
because if Rouhani were to fall, who would take his place? Would it go more hardline?
I think
or would it soften up?
That's the gamble when you talk about regime change. I mean, remember in 2009, there were hundreds of thousands of people in the streets demanding that their votes be respected. And so the question is, do you revive the more liberal green movement that we saw in '09? Or do you get a hardline government replacing Rouhani? So I think that is, we don't know how it's going to shake out in Iran. I think that people in the administration believe, though, that the internal dynamics are moving in a direction that if you just apply enough pressure, again, you either get the regime to fold in negotiations or you get a different regime.
And the reason we care about this as part of a broader oil discussion is if we see a continued pressure from the Trump administration, there's two ways to look at this. They export about, what, 2.5 million barrels a day. That's a lot.
Yes.
Either A, the oil will go nowhere, and so we've got the global markets have a 2.5 million hole to fill,
yes.
Or they will sell the oil on the back channel for cheaper, and it will drive down prices.
Well, here's the question. I mean, I think that if you say you're going to take Iran out of the market, you are going to ensure a significant deficit in this market. Yes, China might not comply. China may take a little more oil, but you're still likely to end up in a situation where more than 1 million Iranian barrels are off that market.
You think so?
Oh, yes. I think the sanctions are incredibly coercive. I think, for example, look at a company like Reliance in India. Reliance has already signaled they will comply. They have significant U.S. exposure. So for any corporate that wants to do business in the United States, they will drop their ties with Iran. So I think it's going to be very meaningful for the market. It is
That's why we popped yesterday.
And again, you have the Saudis saying we'll put more barrels on the market. The Russians saying we're going to put more barrels on the market. But the risk is if they use all their bullets now, and we have additional supply disruption. So look at Venezuela. Venezuela
and Libya, 400,000. We talked to them, and you and I both were standing there at that table when he was talking. The Libyan guy. 450,000
barrels of Libyan production is offline. We cannot afford another supply disruption if we have such thin spare capacity shock absorbers.
Okay, but yesterday we were down at this gas. I guess you were in D.C. So stop following me around,
I will try, Brian.
I think it's the opposite. Rick Perry, we got a few moments with him off camera, sort of walk between meetings, and he said he thought the Saudis. He told me, unfortunately, it wasn't on camera, that he thought the Saudis would be able to add maybe more barrels than they're saying to the market, something to that effect. He was confident in the Saudis' production capability. That's a fair way to summarize our brief conversation.
And I mean, the
Saudis agree with that.
The Saudis have stepped up for President Trump. I mean, we saw at OPEC. On Friday, we had a very sort of ambiguous statement about what type of production adds we would see. And then on Saturday, you had the Saudi oil minister saying, I'm going to clear up any ambiguity. It's going to be 1 million barrels, and we'll do it alone if necessary. It'd be a question, though. The Saudis say they have 2 million barrels of spare capacity, but here's the question. Can they bring it on in 30 days and keep it on for 90? That's the official definition of spare capacity. So, yes, they could probably potentially ramp up to that number over a period of time, but can they plug that hole right away?
Wow. You know, a day you learn something is always the best day, and I did not know that spare capacity in the oil markets actually had a technical definition.
That is the EIA definition.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.